Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're diving into a really fascinating question. How exactly do our global systems build resilience against massive, totally unforeseen shocks? We are going to trace this incredible journey, starting from the physical, brick-and-mortar warehouses of government stockpiles, all the way to the absolute cutting edge of artificial intelligence. By the end of this, you'll see how the very strategies we use to survive a global pandemic are actually merging with the algorithms designed to protect our most complex global supply chains. Okay, to kick things off, let's visualize a 12-hour push pack. Picture a massive 50-ton cache of emergency medical supplies. We're talking broad-spectrum antibiotics, IV fluids, airway equipment, ventilators, the whole shebang, all packed up and ready to be deployed anywhere in the country by unmarked trucks and airplanes in literally exactly 12 hours from an emergency request. But, that brings us to a much bigger and honestly a way more curious question. Having 50 tons of physical supplies ready to roll is an incredible feat of logistics for a tangible emergency. But how on earth does the world prepare for highly abstract, unpredictable global crises? Like, how do we transition from managing a physical stockpile to managing a world where sudden geopolitical shifts can just freeze global infrastructure overnight? Here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. Preparing for black swans, 2. The secret physical stockpile, and 3, when the system breaks. Then we'll pivot to the digital side with 4, algorithmic supply chain resilience, 5, AI and the grounding gap, and wrap up with 6, simulating the future. Section 1, preparing for black swans. The modern origin story here is actually pretty wild. So back in 1998, President Bill Clinton read this sci-fi thriller called The Cobra Event. It was about a mad scientist spreading a virus in New York City. Well, he was so impacted by the book that he immediately convened experts and government officials. That move directly led to the creation of the National Pharmaceutical Stockpile, which was later renamed the Strategic National Stockpile, or SNS, in 2003. Obviously, this stockpile evolved over the decades, facing its absolute greatest test when the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, and then playing a major role in 2022 when the Biden administration distributed 400 million N95 masks straight out of it. Section 2, the secret physical stockpile. You have to appreciate the sheer hidden scale of this operation. It's spread across 12 completely secret locations strategically placed throughout the U.S. They look like ordinary commercial warehouses, but inside they've got shelving that is literally 5 stories high. And they're holding everything, vaccines and antitoxins, including enough anthrax vaccines for a 3-city incident, fully charged ventilators, and chem packs containing nerve agent antidotes. The entire goal here is to act as a critical short-term stopgap buffer during emergencies, when adequate materials just aren't immediately available on the market. Section 3, when the system breaks. But, as we've all learned, physical safety nets definitely have their limits. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the stockpile faced totally unprecedented stress. Demand for items like N95 masks and ventilators just skyrocketed, and as states were scrambling for supplies, political friction emerged over what the exact role of the federal stockpile actually was. In April 2020, senior advisor Jared Kushner stated that the federal stockpile wasn't supposed to be used as a primary state stockpile. Now that stance drew immediate pushback from state governors, who really felt the federal buffer should act as a direct backup for them. Following this, the stockpile's website was actually updated to clarify its role strictly as a short-term stopgap buffer. This really highlights a crucial vulnerability, and it's a huge takeaway for us. You simply cannot always physical stockpile your way out of a dynamic, constantly evolving crisis. Section 4, algorithmic supply chain resilience. So this brings us to a massive pivot. We're moving away from physical warehouses to an industry that is way too complex to simply stockpile: semiconductors. Unlike traditional supply chains that rely on pretty stable, stationary demand and predictable logistics, the modern semiconductor ecosystem is incredibly fragmented. Designed in the USA, manufactured in East Asia. This makes it hypersensitive to what researchers call policy black swans, things like sudden export controls or manufacturing sanctions. Traditional forecasting models completely fail here because we aren't just dealing with a random logistical hiccup, like a flat tire on a delivery truck. These are hard policy constraints driven by extreme geopolitical volatility. Section 5, AI and the grounding gap. Okay, so the core problem when AI tries to manage this volatility is something called the grounding gap. Imagine a government rule suddenly says you must switch to a cheaper supplier immediately to comply with a brand new trade policy. A standard large language model, or LLM, reads that semantic text perfectly and says, yep, let's switch suppliers. But it totally fails to understand the physical reality, that switching suppliers overnight is going to cause a massive inventory bottleneck down the line. It's like having a written federal policy for an emergency stockpile. The paper itself doesn't magically produce physical masks. And AI needs physical grounding. Without it, the AI just suffers from complete decision paralysis the second the geopolitical rules abruptly change.
And that brings us to the solution, a framework called Reflect-A-Chain. Think of it as an agentic world model. Instead of just reading text, this framework gives the large language model a virtual sandbox. It essentially allows the AI to simulate and physically test its decisions in a latent space before it actually acts on them in the real world. This ensures its choices aren't just legally compliant with the new text, but physically possible in the supply chain.
It pulls this off through an awesome mechanism known as double-loop learning. In step 1, reflection and action, the AI deliberates. It proposes an action and tests it simultaneously against semantic rules and physical inventory backpressure. Step 2 is just the high-fidelity execution. But step 3, this is the real game changer, reflection on action. Because supply chain shocks usually have delayed effects, the AI uses retrospective hindsight to look back at its choices. It evaluates the long-term cascade effects and then permanently updates its own internal reasoning weights, so it literally never makes the same strategic error twice. Section 6. Simulating the future. Now, to safely test this AI, researchers couldn't exactly use real proprietary corporate data, right? So they built SemiSim. This is a high-fidelity synthetic environment all parameterized by global trade statistics that acts as a secure testing ground. It lets the AI safely experience sudden export bans, critical material shortages, and massive systemic shocks. It propagates that risk across a virtual network to see how well the AI can keep the supply chain alive, and by extension, keep the tech products you rely on every day on the shelves. The results they got from these simulations are absolutely staggering. If you look at the operability ratio, which basically means, did the supply chain actually survive? Classic reinforcement learning models hit a flat 0% because they just couldn't understand the complex geopolitical text rules. Vanilla text-based LLMs understood the rules but fell right into that grounding gap, paralyzing the system down to a 13.3% operability ratio. But reflective chain, because it had that physical grounding sandbox, it successfully restored the operability ratio to a massive 88.5%. And when you look at the overall economic benefit, Reflex-A-Chain achieved a 250% improvement in average step rewards over the strongest baseline LLMs. That is huge. Just by giving the AI the ability to rehearse trajectories in a simulated physical space, it completely broke through the decision paralysis that stops standard AI dead in its tracks during a crisis. So, we've journeyed all the way from physical warehouses packed with 50 tons of emergency supplies to synthetic AI environments simulating the entire global semiconductor trade. Both are ultimate attempts to build resilience against the unknown. But as AI increasingly takes the wheel on managing our most critical global systems, it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought. Are we truly ready for a world where our supply chains dream of disasters, simulating and solving catastrophic black swan events in a digital sandbox long before they ever happen in reality? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning how our world is being built to survive the unexpected.